The alarms had been screaming for 3 days straight. Fleet Commander stood at the observation window of his flagship, the Eternal Light, watching another defensive line collapse. His tall, slender form was perfectly still. His pale blue skin seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the command deck. Around him, his crew moved with quiet efficiency, but he could feel their fear through the psychic bond that connected all. They were losing, everyone knew it. On the tactical display, red markers spread across the map like a disease. Each red dot was a vessel. Each blinking light that disappeared was another Concordat ship dying. The numbers were impossible to ignore. For every ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. "Commander," his second officer said softly, "the Silver Dawn has been lost, all hands." Closed his large, dark eyes for a moment. The Silver Dawn had carried 4,000 souls, 4,000 lives gone in an instant, and tomorrow it would happen again, and the day after that. The Dominion did not negotiate. It did not stop. It did not show mercy. The hive mind had one purpose: consume everything. For 10,000 years, it had been slowly eating its way across the galaxy. Now it had reached Concordat space, and the greatest alliance in galactic history was crumbling like sand. "Send the withdrawal order," said. His voice was calm, but inside something was breaking. "Pull all remaining ships back to the secondary line." Another retreat, another defeat. He turned away from the window and walked through the corridors of his ship. Crew members stepped aside as he passed, their eyes filled with a mixture of respect and despair. They looked to him for hope. He had none to give. The emergency council meeting was already in progress when he arrived. Holographic images of the 12 elder species flickered around the circular chamber. The ancient crystalline beings who had watched stars being born. The massive and armored, their civilization built on honor and war. The small and fragile, but possessing technology beyond imagination. All of them the greatest powers in the known galaxy. All of them losing. "Our fleet reserves are exhausted," High Counselor of the was saying. Her crystalline form pulsed with soft light as she spoke. "We have committed everything. There is nothing left." "Then we must consider evacuation," another counselor suggested. "Move our populations to the far systems, buy time." "Buy time for what?" His voice was sharp. "The do not stop. They will follow. They will consume. This is not a war we can outlast." The chamber fell silent, felt the weight of that silence pressing down on everyone. This was the end. Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but soon. They would reach there. Their children would be consumed. Their civilizations would become nothing but food for the swarm. "There is one option we have not considered." The voice came from a junior diplomat, a young named. He looked nervous as all eyes turned to him. "Speak," commanded. "The Terrans said. They offered military assistance 6 months ago. We declined, but perhaps." Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the tired sound of beings grasping at absurdity. "The Terrans," one counselor said. "Those primitives from the outer arm, they have been spacefaring for barely 300 years. What could they possibly offer against them?" Remembered the Terran delegation. Small creatures, soft skin. No natural weapons, no psychic abilities, no advanced technology compared to the elder races. They had seemed so eager to prove themselves, like children wanting to sit at the adults' table. The council had politely thanked them and ignored their offer. "They have ships," insisted. "They have soldiers, perhaps not many, but we have nothing else." "It would be sending them to their deaths," said quietly. "A token gesture, nothing more." "Then let it be a token gesture," replied, her crystalline eyes fixed on. "We have exhausted every option. If the Terrans wish to throw away their lives in a meaningless battle, let them. Perhaps their sacrifice will buy us a few more days to evacuate civilians." Felt sick, using the naive humans as a distraction, a sacrifice. But what choice did they have? "I will send the request," he said. He returned to his flagship and composed the message himself. He tried to be honest without being discouraging. He explained the situation, the odds, the likelihood of death. He made it clear that no one would blame them if they refused. The response came faster than he expected. Just a few hours later, his communication officer approached him with a puzzled expression. "Commander, we have received a reply from the Terran government." "Already?" frowned. "What does it say?" The officer handed him the message was remarkably short. "Acknowledged First Fleet en route. ETA 6 cycles, hold the line." That was it, no questions, no requests for more information, no negotiation or hesitation, just acknowledgement. Read the message 3 times, trying to understand. Any Concordat member would have demanded detailed briefings, strategic consultations, guarantees of support. The Terrans asked for nothing. They simply said they were coming. One fleet murmured. What can one fleet of primitives do against the... His second officer looked at the message over his shoulder. Perhaps they do not understand what they are facing, Commander. Perhaps, set down the... Or perhaps they are simply fools rushing toward their own destruction. He felt a small pang of guilt. These Terrans would come to help and they would die. Their strange little ships would be torn apart by the swarm, their soft bodies would be consumed, and the galaxy would barely notice their passing. Send a message to High Command, ordered. Tell them the Terrans are coming, 1 fleet, estimated strength, minimal, do not expect significant impact on the strategic situation. As the message was sent, returned to the observation window. The stars stretched out before him, cold and indifferent. Somewhere out there, human ships were preparing to jump into a war they could not possibly understand. He wondered if he should feel grateful. Instead, he felt only pity. The poor creatures had no idea what they were walking into. In 6 cycles, they would arrive. In 6 cycles, they would learn the truth about the universe, that it was dark and cruel and hungry, and that small, fragile things did not survive in it. Turned away from the stars and went to prepare for another defeat. He did not know that everything was about to change. 6 cycles passed like a slow nightmare. Every day brought new losses. Every night brought new reports of systems falling to the barely slept. None of them did. The Concordat was dying and they could do nothing but watch. When the Terran fleet finally arrived, most of the senior commanders had gathered at Velar Station to greet them. It was partly curiosity, partly a need for distraction from the endless bad news. They stood in the observation deck, surrounded by windows that showed the elegant curves of Concordat warships floating in formation. Sensors detecting hyperspace signatures, an operator announced. The Terrans are arriving. Watch the empty space beyond the station. He expected perhaps a dozen ships. Small ones, probably. Outdated technology. Crews who did not understand what real war looked like. He had prepared a gentle speech to welcome them, to thank them for their sacrifice, to explain that they would be kept in reserve where they might survive a little longer. The first Terran ship dropped out of hyperspace. Felt his breath catch. It was not what he expected. The vessel was massive, larger than most Concordat cruisers. But that was not what made him stare. It was the design. Concordat ships were beautiful. They flowed like water, all smooth lines and gentle curves. This thing looked like it had been built to hurt something. The hull was thick and heavy, covered in overlapping armor plates. Gun batteries lined every surface, more weapons than any reasonable ship should carry. There were no decorative elements, no artistic touches. Every part of that ship existed for one purpose: violence. More ships followed, dozens of them. Carriers, destroyers, cruisers, and others that could not even classify. They were all the same. Brutal, angular, wrong. They looked like weapons given form. The observation deck had gone completely silent. "That is their first fleet," someone whispered. A communication channel opened. A human face appeared on the main display. It was a female, though still had trouble telling human genders apart. Her skin was darker than some, her hair cut short and practical. A scar ran down the left side of her face from her forehead to her jaw. Her eyes were like storm clouds, and they held no warmth at all. "This is Admiral Helena Vance of the Terran Navy," she said. Her voice was flat, professional. "We have arrived as requested. Where do you need us?" Stepped forward to respond. "Admiral Vance, I am Fleet Commander of the... On behalf of the Galactic Concordat, we welcome you and thank you for your assistance." "Appreciated," Vance said. The word held no emotion. "Where do you need us?" Blinked, no pleasantries, no diplomatic formalities. The human wanted to get straight to business. "Perhaps we should conduct a briefing first," he suggested. "Our battle doctrine requires careful coordination. They use psychic links to synchronize our fleet movements. We fight in precise formations, using strategic withdrawals to preserve our forces while—" "I have read your reports," Vance interrupted. "Your tactics are not effective against their adaptation rate exceeds your strategic response time." Several Concordat officers made sounds of offense, raised a hand to calm them. Admiral, the Concordat has been waging war for longer than your species has existed. Our methods have been refined over. And yet you are losing. Vance's eyes did not blink. No disrespect intended, Commander, but you called us because what you have been doing is not working. We are here to help, but we will do it our way. The observation deck was so quiet that could hear his own heartbeat. And what is your way, Admiral? He asked carefully. Vance smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We kill things until they stop being a problem. She requested star charts of the combat zone, all available data on behavior and biology, and the location of the heaviest fighting. She asked nothing else. No support, no supplies, no backup. When tried to explain that she should keep her fleet in reserve, she simply shook her head. We did not come here to hide, she said. We came here to fight. The Terran fleet began moving toward the front within hours. Watched them go, still trying to understand what he had just witnessed. Everything about these humans was strange. Their ships, their attitude, their complete lack of fear. Commander, his second officer said quietly, did you notice something about the Terran crews? What do you mean? I accessed their internal communications briefly, standard procedure for Allied forces. The officer hesitated. They were laughing, Commander, joking with each other. Some of them were playing games. They are about to face and they are treating it like an adventure. Felt a chill run through him. They do not understand the danger. They have never faced anything like the swarm. Perhaps, the officer did not sound convinced. Or perhaps there is something very wrong with them. Later that evening reviewed what little information the Concordat had on the Terran species. It was not much. They came from a single planet called Earth in an unremarkable solar system on the edge of the galaxy. They were young, barely out of their cradle. Their technology was functional but unimpressive. They were short, barely a century on average. By all measures, they should have been insignificant. But something in the data made pause. A footnote, almost an afterthought, in a survey report from the team that had first contacted humanity. Classification note: species displays higher than average environmental hostility. Recommend designation as Class 12 hazardous. Native species adapted to conditions including extreme temperature variation, high radiation exposure, predator-rich ecosystems, and natural disasters. Natives show unusual physical resilience and psychological adaptability. Class 12 hazardous. That was rare. Most species evolved on stable, peaceful worlds. Harsh conditions usually prevented the development of intelligent life. Yet somehow, humans had emerged from a planet that tried to kill them every day. Set down the report. He thought about Admiral Vance's cold eyes. He thought about the Terran ships built for violence. He thought about the crews who laughed as they flew toward certain death. For the first time, a strange thought entered his mind. What if the Concordat had not called for help from primitives? What if they had called something else entirely? He pushed the thought away. It was absurd. The humans were small and soft and mortal. They would fight bravely and they would die, and that would be the end of it. But as he tried to sleep that night, could not shake the image of Admiral Vance's smile. It had not been the smile of a victim walking toward her death. It had been the smile of something that had finally found prey worth hunting. The luminance was dying. Captain of the stood on her bridge, watching the swarm close in around her carrier. The ship's shields had failed an hour ago. Hull breaches covered 3 decks. Half her crew was already dead, and the rest would follow soon. Through the viewport, she could see the vessels approaching. They did not look like ships. They looked like living things, organic nightmares made of chitin and acid and hunger. Their tendrils reached toward her hull, ready to tear through metal and feast on the souls inside. Send a final distress call, ordered. Her voice was calm. There was no point in fear now. Tell the fleet that the luminance has fallen. May our light join the eternal stars. She closed her eyes and waited for death. It did not come. Instead, the darkness behind her eyelids turned red. Explosions, massive ones close enough to shake her dying ship, opened her eyes and saw something impossible. The vessels were being destroyed. New ships had arrived, Terran ships recognizable by their brutal design, but they were not fighting like any fleet had ever seen. They were not maintaining formation. They were not executing careful maneuvers. They were charging directly into the swarm like animals attacking prey. What are they doing? Her first officer gasped. That formation is suicide. They are exposing themselves to crossfire from every angle. watched as a Terran destroyer took a direct hit from an energy weapon. The blast tore through its hull, ripping open 3 decks. Any Concordat ship would have immediately retreated, preserving what remained. The Terran ship did not retreat. Instead, it turned toward the vessel that had wounded it and accelerated. Watched in disbelief as the damaged destroyer drove itself directly at the enemy, guns firing continuously. The 2 ships collided in a massive explosion that destroyed them both. "They killed themselves," her first officer whispered. "They deliberately." "Look," interrupted. More Terran ships were pressing forward, filling the gap left by their fallen comrade. They did not pause to mourn. They did not slow down. They simply kept attacking, kept pushing, kept killing. A Terran cruiser took catastrophic damage. Its engine section was completely destroyed. The ship should have been dead, but lights still flickered in its remaining sections and its forward guns continued to fire. Escape pods did not launch. The crew was not abandoning ship. They were staying at their posts, fighting with a dying vessel. The swarm began to falter. Had never seen that before. They did not hesitate. They did not know fear. They were a hive mind driven by pure instinct, endless and unstoppable. But now something was happening. The coordinated movements of the swarm were becoming erratic. Ships were pulling back instead of pressing forward. The humans noticed too. Admiral Vance's voice cut through all channels, transmitted to every ship in the battle zone. "They are confused. Push forward. Give them nothing. Take everything." The Terran fleet obeyed. They drove into the heart of the formation like a spear, guns blazing, ignoring their own losses. A carrier launched wave after wave of small fighters, each one piloted by a human who flew directly at enemy vessels with no concern for survival. And then they did something had never witnessed in her entire career. They tried to break the humans. The psychic assault hit without warning. It was this most devastating weapon, a mental attack that broadcast pure terror directly into the minds of their enemies. Against it caused instant panic. Entire crews had been driven to madness by that assault. Ships had crashed into each other as pilots lost all control. Felt the edge of it even through her ship's damaged systems. Cold, darkness, the certainty of death, images of being consumed, of becoming nothing, of endless pain. She heard something unexpected through the communication channels. "Laughter. Human laughter." "Is that it?" a Terran voice said. "That is their scary mind trick. I have had worse nightmares after eating bad food." "Focus on the big one," another voice responded. "The ugly one, more ugly than the others, I mean." They were joking. They had unleashed their most terrible weapon, and the humans were making jokes. Watched Admiral Vance's flagship, the Iron Resolve, drive directly into a cluster of command vessels. The ship was already heavily damaged. Fires burned across its hull. Entire sections were open to space, but it did not stop. The Iron Resolve fired everything it had at point-blank range. The explosions were so close that they damaged the Terran ship almost as much as the enemy. Saw hull plates tear away. She saw atmosphere venting from a dozen breaches. She saw, through a gap in the hull, human crew members still at their stations, still firing weapons, still fighting. 3 Terran decks were destroyed. Half the crew died in that single exchange. 11 vessels were annihilated. The Iron Resolve pulled back slowly, not retreating but repositioning. Already, damage control teams were sealing breaches. Engineers were rerouting power. The ship would be combat-ready again within hours. As if losing half its crew was merely an inconvenience. The battle lasted 6 more hours. They threw everything they had at the Terran fleet. They adapted their tactics, changed their formations, tried new approaches. Nothing worked. The humans simply would not stop. They took damage that should have been fatal and kept fighting. They lost ships and pressed forward anyway. They treated death as an acceptable cost, not a reason to retreat. When it was over, the swarm had been driven back. For the first time in months, the Concordat had won a battle. Stood on the bridge of the Luminance, surrounded by the wreckage of what had almost been her grave. A Terran medical ship had already docked, and human doctors were treating her wounded crew. They were efficient and professional, saving lives with the same cold competence that they used to take them. "Captain," a human voice. She turned to see a young officer standing in her doorway. He was small, like all humans. His face was covered in dirt and blood, some of it his own. But he was smiling. "Your crew will be fine," he said. "We got here in time, mostly." stared at him. Your fleet, your people, how many did you lose? The smile flickered for just a moment. Enough, but that is what we came here for. You came here to die. The human's smile returned, but now saw something behind it, something that made her blood run cold. No, he said, we came here to win. Dying is just part of the process. He nodded politely and walked away, heading back to his shuttle. Watched him go. She had spent her entire life believing that they were the most terrifying thing in the galaxy. Mindless, endless, unstoppable, the perfect predators. Now she was not sure. She had seen them hesitate today. She had seen them confused, uncertain, afraid. She had seen what made them afraid. And it was much, much worse than she had imagined. The council chamber was silent. 12 holographic figures stood around the circular room, the leaders of the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. They had gathered to review the battle reports from the front. They had expected to discuss another defeat, another retreat, another step toward extinction. Instead, they watched recordings of human ships tearing through the swarm. High Counselor of the was the first to speak. Her crystalline form pulsed with agitated light. What are they? No one answered. On the display, a Terran Marine squad was boarding a vessel. The footage was shaky, captured by a helmet camera. The defenders were nightmarish, all claws and acid and screaming hunger. Any Concordat soldier would have been paralyzed with terror. The human Marines were laughing. They moved through the organic corridors of the ship with brutal efficiency. One Marine took a claw through his shoulder. He did not scream. He did not fall. He simply shot his attacker in the head, bandaged his wound with one hand, and kept moving. Pause the recording, commanded. The image froze on a human face. Young, probably. It was hard to tell with humans. His eyes were wide, but not with fear, with something else, something hungry. I want answers, said. I want to know exactly what we have invited into our war. Fleet Commander stepped forward. He had spent the last 3 days gathering information, contacting every database, every survey team, every intelligence source that had ever studied humanity. What he had found disturbed him deeply. The Terrans come from a planet called Earth, he began. It is classified as a Category 12. Murmurs rippled through the council. Category 12 was rare. Most intelligent species evolved on peaceful worlds, stable environments where life could flourish without constant threat. Were the opposite, planets where everything was trying to kill everything else. Earth has extreme conditions, continued. Temperature variations of over 100 degrees between seasons, massive storms that destroy entire regions, earthquakes that swallow cities, and predators, many, many predators. How did they survive? A counselor asked. They did not just survive, pulled up a new display. They dominated. Humans are what their scientists call persistence predators. They evolved to chase their prey over long distances, following it until it collapsed from exhaustion. They cannot run fast, they are not strong, but they do not stop, ever. The council stared at the biological data scrolling across the screen. Their bodies are remarkably durable, said. They can lose limbs and survive. They can suffer wounds that would kill most species and continue functioning. When damaged, their bodies release chemicals that temporarily increase their strength, speed, and aggression. Pain makes them more dangerous, not less. That is unusual, said carefully, but not unprecedented. They are also physically resilient. There is more, hesitated. I reviewed their history, the full records, not the edited versions they share with outsiders. He activated a new display. Images appeared, cities burning, armies clashing, weapons of terrible power reducing entire landscapes to ash. Humans have been waging war against each other since before they developed writing, said. They have never stopped. Their entire history is an unbroken record of conflict. They have developed weapons that can destroy planets. They have committed acts against their own kind that I do not have words to describe. The council watched in horrified fascination as the images continued. Wars fought with swords. Wars fought with guns. Wars fought with chemicals and diseases and nuclear fire. Billions of humans killed by other humans, century after century. They call their major conflicts world wars, said. They have had several. Each one killed millions, and each time they rebuilt and prepared for the next one. This is madness, a counselor whispered. How can any species survive such self-destruction? They do not just survive it, turned off the display. They seem to thrive on it. Every war makes them more efficient at killing. Every defeat makes them more determined. They have spent their entire existence perfecting the art of violence. Silence fell over the council again. Could feel the weight of what he was saying pressing down on everyone. There is one more thing, he said, perhaps the most disturbing detail of all. He pulled up the final piece of information. It was a psychological profile compiled from observations of human behavior. Most species fight to survive, said. We fight to protect our homes, our families, our way of life. We do not enjoy it. We do it because we must. He looked around the chamber, meeting each counselor's eyes. Humans are different, some of them, many of them, enjoy it. They have a word for it, thrill. The excitement of danger, the satisfaction of victory. For humans, violence is not just a tool, it is almost a form of entertainment. The counselor shifted uncomfortably. You make them sound like monsters. Perhaps they are, took a deep breath. Consider what we know. They come from a world that tried to kill them every day. They survived by becoming the most dangerous thing on their planet. They spent thousands of years fighting each other, becoming better and better at destruction. And now we have shown them a new enemy, a worthy enemy, something that actually challenges them. He thought of Admiral Vance's smile, the cold joy in her eyes when she spoke about killing. We did not invite allies to our war, said. We invited predators, we showed them prey. High Counselor's crystalline form flickered. What are you suggesting, Commander, that we should fear our own reinforcements? I am suggesting that we have made a mistake, kept his voice steady. We looked at humanity and saw small, soft creatures with short lives and primitive technology. We dismissed them as insignificant. We thought we were being generous by allowing them to help us. He turned to face the full council. We were wrong. The galaxy did not shelter us from the galaxy sheltered us from humanity. They were contained in their little corner of space, fighting among themselves, too busy to notice the rest of us. And we just showed them that there are other things to fight. The council erupted in argument. Some dismissed concerns as paranoid. Others demanded immediate action, but raised a crystalline hand and silence fell. What do you recommend, Commander? She asked. Thought about it for a long moment. For now, nothing. We need them. They are still the immediate threat. But when this war is over, we must be very careful. We must never give humanity a reason to turn their attention to us. You think they would attack the Concordat? Remembered the young Marine on Captain's ship. The smile, the casual acceptance of death, the complete absence of fear. I think, he said slowly, that they would attack anything if they were bored enough. We are not their allies, Counselor. We are simply not their enemies, not yet. The meeting ended without resolution. The counselors departed, each lost in their own thoughts. Remained alone in the dark chamber, staring at the frozen image of the human Marine. Young, eager, covered in blood that was not his own. The true monsters of the galaxy had finally emerged. And they were fighting on his side. For now, Admiral Helena Vance stood before the assembled leaders of the Galactic Concordat. Behind her, a massive star map showed the full extent of territory. It was enormous, spanning thousands of systems, the result of 10,000 years of conquest. We are going to take all of it, she said. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Impossible, High Counselor said. No fleet has ever penetrated deep space. The swarm grows denser the closer you get to their core worlds. It would be suicide. We have held the line for 3 months, Vance replied calmly. We have pushed them back at every engagement. Their adaptation rate cannot match our tactical flexibility. They are predictable. We are not. You are proposing genocide, another counselor accused. The complete destruction of a species. This violates every principle of galactic law. Vance's eyes moved to the speaker. You asked us to save you. Did you think we would do it politely? The chamber fell silent. Fleet Commander stepped forward. He had worked closely with the Terran Admiral for months now. He had seen what her people could do. Part of him was horrified. Part of him was grateful. He was no longer sure which part was larger. Admiral, he said carefully, the Concordat has fought defensive wars for we contain threats. We establish boundaries. We do not exterminate. And how has that worked with the, Vance asked. You have been containing them for 10,000 years. They are still here. They are still growing. They will never stop. She turned back to the star map. We are not here to contain them. We are here to end them, completely, permanently. so they can never threaten anyone again. Felt a chill. There was no anger in Vance's voice, no hatred, just cold, absolute certainty. She was not proposing genocide out of rage or revenge. She was proposing it because it was efficient. You asked for monsters, Vance said. Here we are. The vote was close. Many counselors refused to support such extreme action. But in the end, desperation won. They had killed billions. They would kill billions more if they were not stopped. The Concordat approved the offensive. The combined fleet departed within a week. Terran ships formed the vanguard, as always. Concordat vessels followed in support, providing long-range firepower and logistics. It was the largest military operation in galactic history. They fought back with everything they had. The swarm threw billions of drones at the advancing fleet. World ships the size of moons moved to intercept. The hive mind coordinated attacks of impossible complexity, striking from every direction at once. None of it mattered. The humans adapted faster than they could process. They changed tactics in real time, exploiting weaknesses before the hive mind even recognized them. They treated each battle as a learning opportunity, studying the enemy, understanding them, finding new ways to kill them. And they kept coming. System after system fell. Breeding worlds were sterilized. Drone production facilities were destroyed. The swarm began to shrink for the first time in recorded history. Watched it all from the bridge of his flagship. He had seen many wars. He had never seen anything like this. The Terrans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like a force of nature, relentless and inevitable. The final battle took place at the Nexus, the heart of the hive mind. It was a massive organic structure, larger than most planets, pulsing with the consciousness of 1 trillion connected minds. Destroying it would end the forever. The swarm made its final stand there. Every remaining ship, every surviving drone gathered to protect their core. The battle was brutal beyond description. Ships died by the thousands. The void itself seemed to burn. The Terrans broke through. Marine assault ships penetrated the Nexus's outer shell. Thousands of human soldiers poured into the living corridors, fighting their way toward the central consciousness. They threw everything at them: warriors, acid, psychic attacks, traps, suicide drones. The Marines kept advancing. Monitored the assault from orbit. He could see the progress of the Terran forces marked by destruction and death. They were taking heavy casualties. They did not care. Commander, his communication officer said, Admiral Vance is requesting that all Concordat observers withdraw from the Nexus interior. Frowned. Why? She did not say. She simply stated that what happens next is not for others to see. A cold feeling settled in stomach. He gave the order. Concordat personnel pulled back, leaving only humans inside the Nexus. What happened in the next hour was never officially recorded. No footage survived. No detailed reports were filed. When asked Admiral Vance about it later, she simply shook her head. Some things should stay in the dark, she said. The Nexus died. The hive mind screamed across every psychic frequency, a sound of pure agony that drove sensitive species to their knees. And then it was silent. The Dominion, a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years, ended in 8 months. The celebration lasted for weeks. Every world that had lived in fear of the swarm rejoiced. The Concordat declared the humans heroes. Monuments were planned. Songs were written. But did not celebrate. He stood at the viewport of his flagship, watching the Terran fleet prepare to depart. They were going home, back to their small corner of the galaxy. Their job was done. An aide approached him. Commander, should we not be grateful? They saved us all. Watched the angular, brutal shapes of the human ships. He thought about everything he had seen. The violence, the efficiency, the absolute lack of hesitation. Grateful, he said slowly. We showed the galaxy's apex predator that there are threats worth hunting. We proved to them that their skills are valuable, that war is not something to be ashamed of. We gave them purpose. He turned to face his aide. Pray they never grow bored. Pray they never look at the rest of us and see prey. Because now they know what they are capable of. Now they know that nothing in this galaxy can stop them. The aide swallowed nervously. Surely they would not turn on us. We are allies. We are allies today, turned back to the viewport. But humans live short lives and think in short terms. Their children will not remember this war. They will only remember that their parents were warriors, that violence brought them glory, that the galaxy feared them. He watched the first Terran ships jump into hyperspace, disappearing in flashes of light. "We did not defeat the monsters," said. "We simply chose which monsters would rule." Far away, aboard the departing Terran flagship, a young ensign named Cole stood at his own viewport. He watched the alien stations grow smaller in the distance, the elegant ships of the Concordat floating in peaceful formation. "Nice folks," he said to a passing, "bit soft, though." The laughed, they would not last a week on Earth. Smiled, it was a friendly expression, warm and genuine. He bore no ill will toward the aliens. They had been good hosts, grateful for the help. He hoped they would be happy. But as he turned away from the viewport, a different thought crossed his mind. A thought he would never say aloud, but that lived somewhere deep in his human heart. "If they ever threaten us, we will do to them what we did to the..." It was not a wish, it was not a plan. It was simply a fact as natural as breathing. Humans protected their own, humans survived, and if survival meant destroying everything else in the galaxy, well, that was just what humans did. The Terran fleet vanished into the darkness between stars, carrying its crews back to their little blue planet. Behind them, the Concordat began the long process of rebuilding, of healing, of trying to forget the horrors they had witnessed. The true monsters had returned to their den. But they remembered the way out. And they always would.